Hello, this is going to be a quick video of me going through an FMOD session that I created. I recently took part in the Global Game Jam and I created music for Bubble Hell, which is a 2 to 4 player platform battler where players use bubble guns to trap opponents and shoot pins to defend themselves. I'll put up some snippets of that now just so you've got a bit of context as I go through the session. So I used FMOD to create a dynamic piece of music that increases in intensity depending on how many bubbles were on screen. So this gameplay element creates more tension for the player because there's more obstacles, more danger on the screen. So it was a fitting parameter for what I wanted to achieve. Here's a quick playthrough of the FMOD session itself. So let's have a listen. You'll see me messing around with this parameter here across the top, and that is going to be moving through those tension layers, or intensity layers. Let's have a listen. So as you can see, as I move through this parameter, the music can be more intense or less intense. And that's how that parameter works. So thankfully, just due to the parameter that I chose, which was the amount of bubbles or the amount of objects on screen, this number is never going to be jumping around wildly. That could create some jarring situations, but the parameter that I chose is one that kind of would gradually shift. So you're never going to get that weird, it's never going to be jumping wildly between, which is fantastic. So let's have a look at how that logic actually works. So if I go to the parameter sheet, we can have a look at the automation for that. So we'll whack open the automation here. So when this parameter is at 0, you can see that the bass track is at 0 dB, and then both the layer 1 and layer 2 are also at 0. As we increase that parameter, layer 2 is still out, but layer 1 is fading in. When we get to about parameter 2 here, you can see that now layer 1 is completely in, and the second layer will begin fading in as we move from 2 to 4, and then going from 4 to 6. The only thing that's really changing here is this distortion plugin that I have is increasing. So you can see it goes from 0 all the way down here to about 50% at its maximum. And to compensate for the increase in volume that the distortion plugin brings, then you can see that we're just coming down by 3 dB as the distortion picks up. And that's it. So it's a pretty simple intensity, but I think it works pretty well. The second use case I had for FMOD was to use it to smoothly move between the game loop and the pause menu loop. So like I said earlier, that's what this track is, and we'll take a look at it now. So this is all controlled by these two parameters. We have the menu pause and then the game resume. These aren't continuous parameters like the amount of bubbles or the intensity parameter was. These are discrete, so they just go between 0 and 1. So looking at this logic, we can see these two regions across the top. We have a blue region, which is our looping region, and this is just allowing our music to loop smoothly. One of my favorite features of these loop regions is that they can have little transition regions. So at the end of the loop, as it jumps back to the start of the loop, you can actually fade out your original audio source. And this has the effect of, if you've got like a reverb tail or something like this, as it's looping back, you'll still hear that reverb tail trail, and then as it loops back to the start. So this completely removes the need to do that in your DAW. So you can see this little tail of audio on the bass track here. Ordinarily, if I was making a game loop that I was just going to be delivering to someone to put into Unity or something, I'd need to cut that tail and place it at the start of our audio loop so that when it loops, the reverb doesn't just get cut off unnaturally. But that can sometimes present, that solution works, but it sometimes presents kind of compositional challenges. So say if you want like an instrument to come in at the end of your loop or in the last 4 bars of your loop and do a resolving run or something like this, and you want it to land on beat 1, that means you're going to have that note, that beat 1, at the start of your loop. And you might not want that because you've just had a nice introduction and that instrument isn't there. So having these transition regions makes that possible, because the first time, the loop region transitions, I guess, means that you could have that run only come in at the end, and you wouldn't hear beat 1 of that particular instrument the first time around, but once it loops, you would hear it, and then it makes sense. So it's very good. It makes it quicker, and you can also dodge some kind of compositional problems with your loops as well, which I think is a big plus. So that's the blue regions. So we've got that same idea happening here with the pause menu music. These red ones, these are called magnet regions, and what essentially they do is when you hit a parameter, the magnet region will call the playhead to that region. So if we were playing through here and we hit the menu pause, then the playhead would jump over to this magnet region. And then when we hit game resume, the playhead would jump back to the game resume. I didn't want the magnet regions to pull the playhead always to the start of the loop, because if you imagine a scenario where the gamer or the player is, they play the game for, I don't know, a couple of seconds, and then they hit pause, and then they hit start, and then it goes back to here, and then they hit pause again, and then they hit start. They're going to be hearing that same bit of audio over and over again. It's going to get repetitive, and it's going to sound jarring and just, I don't know, a bit sloppy. So I wanted the playhead to kind of remember where it is up to in the loop, and FMOD has functionality for that. Down here you see the offset. You can hit that and make it relative. So when you hit the parameter and the magnet region calls the playhead, if I was 2 bars into this first loop, then the playhead is going to get called to the start of the 3rd bar or the end of the 2nd bar of that region. And as it keeps playing through, say we get to the 4th bar, if we flicked back over to the game music, it's going to be at that 4th bar. So that way, no matter how many times you start or stop the music, the playhead is always going to be moving through, and you're not going to keep jumping back to the same part of audio that you were at, which is just a bit more immersive and less tedious, I think. So let's have a listen to how that works. There we go. So you can see that it moves fairly smoothly between the pause and game music. So to help smooth out those transitions a bit further, you can hear that not only does the bass track or the bass or the music track fade out, so that's again done in these little transition regions here. So you can see that the source music will fade out. In this case, it's the menu music that would be fading out, and we're fading into the destination, which is the game resume. So that's happening, but there is also a kind of filter sweep happening on the menu music as we go back to the game music. So it's just, starting at the top and going down. You can see that here. If we just play. So you can see that as that transition would happen, the filter sweep would happen for you, which is very nice. And similarly, when we go from the game to the pause menu, we get a similar effect. We have the source music fading out, but then also some automation on the EQ. So it just rolls off as well, just to help soften the transition a bit more. And that's it. That's the fairly basic kind of dynamic audio solution I came up with during the jam, but I was pretty happy with how it worked and pretty pleased that I could get it done over the weekend, which was good. But yeah, a massive thanks to IGDA Melbourne for hosting the Melbourne Game Jam at SAE this year, and of course to my teammates that I worked with. It's no fun making music for a game that doesn't exist, so it was awesome to be able to see it in engine and working. All of their details will be in the description below, so you can check them out. Thanks for watching. Bye.